If you're living in Australia, you'll know that we have the Australian federal election coming up. And this usually means that there are so many promises made by both parties and they're going to come out and suggest that they're going to solve all of your problems. Now, if you're interested in what my thoughts are, how we're going to navigate this and which policies actually make a difference, then definitely keep watching. Hey guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because I talk about real estate, personal development, and all things financial freedom. Now we are heading into the election season, which means sometimes we have to cover off a little bit more of the politics than I actually personally like. Now, I've had some people comment down below saying that maybe you like one party over the other and it's based on how you've actually been speaking. And the reality is, I actually don't vote. I haven't voted in over 10 years, and the reality behind any of these promises actually coming to fruition is very unlikely. And I've got evidence to prove that, and this is why I've had the thesis that I can't rely on the government or the politicians or the Prime Minister at the time to help my own personal financial freedom goals. Now, I don't advocate for whether you should vote or not vote. I'm not that type of guy. What I do advocate for is personal development and learning. You need to take accountability of your own learning and your own finances. So I hope you continue all the way through this video. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Watch the 1,000 other videos I have around personal finance, whether that's crypto, shares, property, whatever you like, it's all on this channel. So let's cover off what the major policies are when it comes to housing. And then I'm going to give you my opinion and perspective on how all of this works, coming from a guy that runs one of the fastest growing buyers agencies in Australia, where we've purchased over 1,000 properties for clients. So let's dive into it. What are the major parties' housing policies? For many Australians, housing affordability is one of the biggest issues that will decide whether Labor or the Coalition get their vote at the upcoming election. So what are the relevant policies of the two major parties and which plan is better? Housing affordability looks set to be one of the defining issues of the forthcoming election campaign. Housing was the most second pressing concern among Australian voters in January, above the economy, healthcare, and crime. Home ownership rates have been steadily declining for decades, and across the political spectrum, there's a broad consensus more needs to be done to change that. Now, we do have the election confirmed for 3rd of May, and let's dive into what they are thinking. How will Labor improve housing affordability? Along with their Help to Buy scheme introduced late last year, Labor want to address housing affordability by increasing residential construction levels. I feel like I've heard this 4 years ago. Housing Minister Claire O'Neil told the Saving Tip Jar podcast the government is focused on the supply side of the housing equation. The fundamental problem we have here is we're not building enough homes quickly enough. We came to government after a decade of genuine neglect of this problem, she said. In what will likely be often repeated throughout the campaign, she pointed to the housing accord the government made in 2023, with all states and territories setting the ambitious target of 1.2 million new homes over the 5 years from July last year. We've set a target because we need to be bold, ambitious, and we need to galvanize every level of government in every part of our country to really take this problem seriously, she told the podcast. I'm all about ambitious goals, and I think it's really good to have stretch targets as an individual or a company. But to be honest, in this situation, as soon as they had come out with the accord and the goals that they had set, I said it was probably delusional. So yes, you can have stretch targets, but being delusional is a whole nother thing. Shared equity. One of the major new initiatives introduced during Miss O'Neil's time as Housing Minister has been to Help to Buy scheme. This is a shared equity scheme under which the government will contribute a portion of the purchase price for eligible home buyers. Those buying a new home can receive an equity contribution of up to 40%, while the maximum for existing properties is 30%. Homeowners can then buy back the portion of the government owned by the government once they are able to. If the property is sold, the government is entitled to its portion based on the value of the property at the time of sale. Now, this is a really cool initiative because it allows people to get into the market, but I can't hold on because when they announced this, I was like, we really are headed into this environment where you'll own nothing and be happy. And if you haven't heard about that concept, it's this idea or conspiracy theory that the government will own everything, you'll just be happy renting, and that's how we will stay in this system and we continue renting, working, and just paying it off, and we'll be actually really happy about it. When I had a conversation with someone in the office, probably about 2 weeks ago, I said, it's pretty much heading into this environment off the back of a podcast I had done on the More Than Money podcast. I said, it's like heading into this environment where you'll own nothing and be happy. And the guy I was speaking to says, what do you mean? Like, you'll own nothing and be happy? No one's going to be happy by owning nothing. And I said, okay, well, it might not be the way that you think. I went on to say, currently you rent, right? And he said, yes. And it means you don't own the place you live in. And he goes, yeah, correct, because it's too expensive. And I said, all right. So if you had to buy something you could afford, it probably won't be in Sydney. And he said, that's right, it would probably be overseas because I just couldn't afford anything, or maybe it's going to be a unit in a regional center. And I said, all right, so you're actually happier renting in this location than you are buying it? And he said, yes. And it's at that point the penny dropped. And in Australia, we're pretty much heading into that environment, if we're not already there, where only the ultra rich can control and own assets like housing. But what I've tried to advocate on this channel for is that there are other areas, there are different markets all across Australia where you can get a piece of your land. You can go out there, buy assets. It is the only way to get ahead, because inflation is going to kill the dollar, which means everything you make will get taxed from the normal income tax, and then you get taxed this imaginary one, which is inflation. So even if you're making $1,000 a week, it's probably worth closer to about $600 per week. And in 30 years time, it's probably worth 50% of that. And that is a very scary proposition. And that's why I always advocate for you to go out there, learn about money, understand why there are hard assets that you need to be investing into. And something like real estate is how I built my foundation for the first 5 years. I bought my first property at 21. It wasn't a popular decision. I got so much smack for it. And I cover this off in my book, Retire Filthy Rich with Real Estate, where you can just go through what my mindset was at the time and why all my friends told me I was an idiot. The Home Guarantee Scheme expansion. In early April, Labor announced it also has plans to expand the Home Guarantee Scheme to be available for all first home buyers. First introduced by the Coalition in 2022, this scheme is designed to help first home buyers get into the market with a smaller deposit, potentially just 5%, and still avoid LMI. The government acts as a guarantor for up to 15% of the loan, reducing the risk to lenders. The expansion will mean removing caps on income and the limit on how many people can take part each year. Currently, it's only 50,000. Labor says this will increase to 80,000 once these limits are removed. The property price caps will be boosted, including by up to 1.5 million in Sydney and 950,000 in Melbourne and 1 million in Brisbane. We've also got the freeze of the overseas investments on established properties. So Mr. Dutton has been pushing for this for a while, and in Feb, Jim Chalmers announced Labor will be introducing this ban from 1st April until at least 31st March 2027. I made a video about this and what this actually means for you and I, and you can check out this video after it, because honestly, it seems like a bit of a nothing burger because of the amount of transactions that actually happen there. How will the Coalition improve housing affordability? The couple of really important points here is the most important thing is to get supply moving. It is grinding to a halt, Mr. Taylor said. If you haven't got the supply, people are not going to be able to own a home. And I agree with that. Now, when you have increasing supply and you have interest rates being cut, which is what we're going to see in the next 18 months, it does actually provide a silver lining. And that silver lining will be for the renters. Now, I'm someone who rent vests, so I'm a rent vester. I rent where I want to live and I'm really happy there, and I go and invest where the numbers make sense because I can go and get the best growth that I need. And they're often in regional areas and interstate. What it could mean is that people that want to buy and haven't been able to because they don't have the borrowing capacity now might be able to enter the market, and they may be able to go and buy the place they actually want to live in. And that means there's going to be less pressure on the rental market. Now, do I think it's going to be significant enough to get us from a rental crisis scenario to a balanced market? No. That's why we need to have supply increase and increase fast. And that's going to be one of the big focuses for this election as well. The Super Home Buyer Scheme, a major point of difference between the two parties in the Coalition's proposal to allow budding homeowners to dip into their superannuation to buy. First suggested in 2022, this would allow first home buyers to withdraw up to 50,000 of their super balance as a deposit, provided this amount, as well as any capital gains, goes back in once the property is sold. It's bizarre that our superannuation money can be spent or invested on anyone else's houses except on your own. We know property and housing is a really important part of someone's investment portfolio. We also know the best indicator of whether someone's going to have a good retirement isn't just the superannuation they've got, but whether they own a home or not. And this is actually a very good point, because you could go out there, use your super, turn it into a self-managed super fund and buy property. And you would go out there and buy investment properties, which we help a lot of clients with as well. So you can book in a call if you need that help. But if you're someone that goes, well, I don't actually want to invest, I just want to buy my own home, currently in the system, you can't actually do that. Now what we're seeing is with a Super Home Buyer Scheme, you might be able to actually do that. And it makes a lot of logical sense. I'm someone who advocates for you to go out there, build the investment portfolio, then use that as leverage to go out there and buy your own home, either debt-free or with very little debt. That's how I like to do it. I would go out there, invest for the next 5 to 10 years, then sell those properties or sometimes hold a majority of them, come back into the market you want to buy in, and you can live very comfortably that way. What most people do is they buy their own home first, and that screws you over because you have no borrowing capacity left. You're stuck to a mortgage for 30 years on that property, and it also means you have less flexibility. And usually, you're doing this in your 20s and early 30s, which is pretty much the exact time you're going to have the most change in your life, and is why you should probably look at rent vesting rather than just going and buying something. All of these schemes coming together help first home buyers. And while I'm a big advocate for people to have their own homes, I just don't think it's the right way if they're looking at retirement holistically. If you go out there and say, well, I don't want to invest in property, I want to invest in other things, I still advocate for that. I just think that you shouldn't be going out there buying your own home, getting stuck, and then being unhappy for the next 30 years going, at least I've got my own place, but retirement looks absolutely dreadful because you're relying on your super, you're relying on the pension, and we clearly know that the rules can change, the taxes can change, and you better guarantee they're going to change in the next 30 years. So if you're someone that wants to take accountability and build your machine that's going to allow you to retire early or retire on your own terms, definitely reach out. I'll leave links in the description box below, but I want to know what your thoughts are. I know politics is a big thing and it's going to be a big player in the next couple of weeks. So let me know in the comments down below and we can have a discussion. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell icon because I'm bringing out a banger video next week. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.